Hello and Happy New Year. I thought it might be quite fun to talk about microphones. I was recently talking with someone on Zoom about storytelling, and storytelling is an interesting subject because it's not salesy, it's not designed for anything else other than sharing experience with you. And I think microphones are a really good spot, at least in our industry, to talk about that, because all the microphones that I own have a story connected to them. I'll have chosen them for a specific reason. They'll exist in my life to do a specific job, and I can remember the point in time in my career when I bought them. And I'm really distracted by the fact that I'm fairly sure this is overexposed. There we go. Stories. This is the first microphone I ever recorded with. This is a Rode NT1A. This is one of the first versions, of the Rode microphone. They made a cream-coloured one of this, and I remember being 15, sat in my dad's house trying to record Damien Rice covers. That was my first recording experience, and not being able to figure out why, if I've got a microphone and an acoustic guitar, why I can't make it sound like a finished record. And I was getting really frustrated. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain to my dad that it sounded small by comparison to the emotional response I was used to getting from those records. So I don't particularly love this mic, but I keep it because it's where everything began. This would be the first microphone that I bought with my own money, outside of like a typical SM57. This is an SM7. I bought this at university when I started recording demos for my very first band, of which I will not tell you the name of because it is awful. And we would be at queue showing a photo of my university bedroom. Really sorry. It was a SLATE. Recording our demos in that room and in the room adjacent, and getting complaints from our neighbours about why our vocalist Liam was screaming his face off. He was really loud, which is why the SM7B worked really well, because it needs a lot of preamp gain, but Liam was so loud that I didn't have to do that. So I could get around the fact that my, an M Audio 2626 just couldn't power it, hence this microphone. You can see I spray painted its bum brass because I would take it to studios and I'd forget which one's mine. I also reversed the clamp so that the XLR was not on the side of the person using it. It was on the opposite side. Hello, Buffy. You gonna come say hi? Talking about microphones, you've not seen these before, have you? Hang on. All done? And now hiding under the sofa because something new has happened. When I started my studio, I moved back and I bought a whole bunch of microphones that I wasn't really sure whether I needed or not. I didn't own an SM57 anymore, but I'd always been curious about the ones that came before it. And these are Unidynes 545D. I think these are the Mark IIIs. And these came before this guy. And the story behind these is that they're from a BBC studio that shut down from Manchester. And what's really cool is that I had to essentially trust a friend of mine, because I didn't drive back then, to go and pick them up on my behalf. I'd have to give them the money and then wait for them to post them to me. And it was fine. Nothing bad happened, but something bad should have happened. Sending money to people on the internet doesn't always go well. What else have we got? And then we've got an SM58 because I was told you're supposed to have one. I've used it twice. And then came a phase where I started getting really interested in modded microphones. Well, at least modded microphones that tried to replicate classic microphones like Neumann's by taking cheap Russian mics, like these OKTAVAs, and modifying the electronics and or the capsule to make them sound like something else or something better. I loved that idea. I spent months trying to find these. So these are MK219s, and they were modified by someone called Simon here in the UK that could do the Michael Jolie mods. And these Michael Jolie mods were infamous on what is now called, I think it's called Gearspace. And he would make these microphones and these modifications that would take $100, $200 mics and make them sound like microphones worth 10 times that value. So then I bought into that, and I bought these OKTAVAs, the black ones, and then these guys. And then this one's interesting because I bought this off a friend called Jeff Dunn. He does records like Chelsea Grin, Veil of Mayer, Silent Planet. These became my overhead mics because he stopped recording for a little while. He was still mixing, he just wasn't tracking. And these were my overhead mics for the longest time. Yeah, along with those, I then started building out a drum setup. So I bought this Audio Technica kick drum mic. It's a dual element kick drum mic. It's an ATM 250DE. DE, I guess, stands for dual element. What's interesting, look at that. That is a dynamic mic and a condenser capsule all in one go. And I use this pretty much as my starting point every time I'm recording. Not because I think it sounds amazing, sometimes it really doesn't sound amazing, but because I know what its inherent character is. And so as a result of that, I know what to move on to if I don't like it. And then I bought this, seeing as we were doing drums. This is a BEYER Dynamic M201TG. Come on, be my mate. There we go. And this guy's interesting because it sounds it's a dynamic mic, it sounds like a condenser, it's got a really good rejection pattern. Again, it doesn't always work. I tend to just use 57s or the Unidynes now for snare because I got better at setting up drum kits and dealing with bleeds, and then I could get away with needing more. When you change the polar pattern of something to a tighter configuration of the pattern, the microphone gets a bit darker, so then you kind of have to either back it off or it becomes a bit of a kerfuffle. Which then leads me on to this guy, which I've had to retire. This is an AKG C414 BULS model. And the BULS is interesting because it has two transformers in here, which makes it one of the darker C414s that you can get. It's infamously disliked by a lot of people. I found it to be quite flexible, just characterless. So I tend to try and find these when I go to traveling studios and use them for toms or the outside of a kick drum. I've used it on vocals before, but because it's so almost a bit beige, it's not emphasizing the things that I guess you would want to have emphasized. And then all of a sudden I made friends with a guy called Jason at Rode. No, wait, that's too soon. And so for the longest time, either the OKTAVAs or the C414s were my vocal mic of choice, but I never knew what I was listening for. So I bought this. And this is the SLATE modeling mic. And the thing that made this really interesting is, like a Kemper, it had no inherent sound in itself. So this without the software, this sounds like a very clean microphone, but it doesn't have a character. And the software would allow you to imitate valve mics, expensive valve mics. And what that taught me was the ballpark for what a really, really good microphone should give you the idea of. That was like the vocal mic for a really long time for the split EP that I did with Holding Absence and Loathe. It was used for everything apart from screams. It was used for everything on the first Holding Absence album for singing, I think. I feel like it was. And Sundowning, the Sleep Token album. That was the vocal mic that I used. As a result of that, actually, I ended up buying another microphone, which is right for the end because that's the last mic I bought. And then for the longest time, I actually just didn't buy any microphones because I'd built a kit that allowed me to have access to replicating snare or kick drums that I really liked, and then vocal performances that I really liked. And then if I went to another studio and I needed anything else, I could just make do what was on site. But then I had these key pieces that I was very attached to and I knew what to do with. So there's more microphones that I would like to buy, but there's almost kind of no reason to buy. Simply because if I did, they just wouldn't get used a whole lot unless I was getting like hired all the time to do external tracking. And I'm not. I'm more mixing at the moment or doing production, which is, a producer job. And then I made friends with Rode, the company Rode, and they introduced me to these. And these are insane. Really, really great. These are called the TF5s. And these are great. These are tiny as well, by the way. Just really, really small, really amazing sounding. They don't need an awful lot of preamp gain, really useful. And because of the way that they're made and the way that they translate, it's really hard to describe. It's very 3D sounding, really, really satisfying. So between that and the modded OKTAVAs, I kind of have two worlds. I have old sounding stuff, and then I have new sounding stuff. And so then I said, may I please try some other microphones? And they were like, yeah. And they sent me these. Look at that. That's a ribbon mic. That is an over-engineered ribbon mic. And these have been used on drum rooms ever since they turned up. Typically, I usually, what a weird word, like to use an AEAR88, but those are really not common here in the UK. I used to borrow a Get Goods one all the time, and then that kind of got a bit over the top. So having my own ribbon mics is really great because that makes up quite a lot of the things that I look for when capturing what I would say is the kit response in the room. I put them in Bloomline configuration in front of the kit. And that in combination with the overheads, insane. Already halfway there. Is that everything? Hello, Willow. Willow says hi. What are you doing? Sorry? Hello. So, I guess I've got a friend for the rest of the time. And then, as a result of all the vocal recording with the SLATE mic, I found that I kept coming back to the same model all the time, which was the Blackbird U47, which I can't afford to buy. But I was like, if I'm just using the 47, I should just get a U47. And this was the last mic that I bought. And this is a STAM U47 recreation. Would you like to see what it sounds like in before this doesn't work? Hello. 1 hour later, and here we are. Right, let's see if I can get this to the right. I'm a professional, and so hopefully you can hear a difference in quality between this and what we were just using, the SM7B. And that's all my microphones. So thank you very much for joining me talking through microphones. What's your favorite microphone? What's been the microphone that has your favorite story? My cats are destroying stuff. Thank you for stopping by, and it's nice to see you all again. So until next time, don't be a dick and eat your goddamn vegetables. All right, bye.